It's quite a morning and there's a lot to discuss. We welcome you right now to the big story once again. And the story is that Donald J. Trump has secured the U.S. presidency by winning Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes. And millions of persons cast their votes in his favor and making him this morning the president-elect. The second president in U.S. history to win 2 non-consecutive terms. This historic victory also puts Trump on track to win, of course, the popular vote, a remarkable feat that would make him the first Republican to do so in 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the big story welcomes right now attorney at law Marlon Hill, who we have had on this program several times before. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Hill.
Good morning, my brother. We live another day.
We do live another day. Thank you for joining me this morning. And also, let me welcome retired Provost of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, Professor Basil Wilson. Morning, Prof.
Good morning, Richard Lee.
Thank you for joining me once again. Marlon, let me start with you. And it is a victory that you were not seeing happening, and certainly not in the way it did.
I would agree. But democracy is a mirror of a people at a particular moment in time. It's very important that we recognize that. And we also need to recognize that the demographics of the United States is still a complex experiment. We came close. President Trump secured 277 electoral votes, 7 more than, and the votes are still being counted. He probably will gain some more. But his coalition, that he did better on the margins, Richie, in 2016 in terms of the numbers, especially in rural areas. And you got to remember, America is still 59-60% white. That don't look like you and me, Richie. So folks many times vote their own securities or insecurities, whichever one you want to pick.
Mm-hmm. Professor, let me zero in on Pennsylvania, and overall, what are some of the factors do you think contributed to his victory, to Trump's victory, especially in Pennsylvania, and how did it impact the overall election outcome?
Elections are won on the margin.
Marlon, I'd actually thrown that out to Professor as he was about to answer. No worries. Yes, Prof.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, an election is a manifestation of race triumphing over gender. That I think at some point during the campaign, there were signs as if gender could be more significant than race. And when you look at the results of the election, white women in the suburbs did not come out in large numbers to support Kamala Harris and race.
Are you there, Professor? Seems we have lost Professor. Oh, my goodness. Mr. Hill, are you there? Seems we have lost both of our guests, actually. Gentlemen, are you there? No, we do have to do a quick redial and get them back on. We're about to have a very, very important discussion. We have actually started that with both of these gentlemen. One is well-known attorney at law, Marlon Hill. He's based in Florida, and he has some very strong views on this. Hold on for me, Marlon, while we try to reconnect with Professor Wilson, who is in New York City, and try to get this conversation going once again. These things do happen from time to time, and so we ask you to bear with us, listeners, as the big story reconnects with Professor Basil Wilson and, of course, Marlon Hill. Yes, Prof, we're back with both of you. You were answering the question. Please go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, point that I was making is that I thought the Hispanic voters seem to have played a critical role in Trump's victory. I think in Pennsylvania, in places like Allentown, where I think Kamala Harris was hoping to pick up votes. In fact, the Hispanic vote went overwhelmingly to Donald Trump. That they were convinced that during the Donald Trump years, that they had more money in their pockets, that the economy functioned much better, and that things were more appropriate in terms of the cost of living and in terms of the, when you look at the Federal Reserve and in terms of the interest rates. So I think there's no question, as James Carville said during the years of Bill Clinton, it's the economy stupid, and I think that is a big factor in terms of Trump winning the presidency again.
Marlon, there's a point when many persons were saying that a lot of females are going out and are supporting Kamala Harris. What are some of the factors you thought that helped Donald Trump to gain this ascendancy?
I think Prof hit it right, the nail right on the head. I do think that women went out to support Kamala Harris, and also you got to look at the split votes with regards to women supporting abortion access across the country. States like New York, Montana, Florida, they also voted for it, but it required a 60% vote here, and didn't make it because of it went up to 57%. But like I said, the demographics in our population, the United States is a very complex nation, hundreds of millions of people. 59% of the population is still white. So even if white women supported Kamala Harris at a high percentage, it was not enough in her coalition because white women have a greater share of the population. So like Prof said, in those suburbs and rural areas, President Trump was able to either hold the margin or increase the margin. And in politics, if you're not adding where you need to add, as opposed to subtracting in your base, it comes down to the math. And the math was in his favor in the demographic makeup of the United States in this particular moment in time in history. And if you go back to the Obama years, that was the opposite, with regards to Obama being able to build a coalition at that particular time based on the demographics still of America still being majority white.
Mm-hmm. As we look now to President Trump taking back the reins of power, Professor Wilson, are you seeing more challenges and or more opportunities arising from his historic non-consecutive two-term presidency, and how do you believe he will navigate them going forward?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that are quite frightening. We saw Project 2025, which was put out by the Heritage Foundation, that Trump tried to distance himself from that ominous attempts to control the executive branch of government. He now has control of the Supreme Court if judges want to resign. He has control of the Congress, and he can in fact appoint judges. He has promised retribution. We have to look, determine to what extent that might be attempted. And, it's a perilous time. I mean, in terms of checks and balances. We still have the filibuster that Democrats can use in the Senate, that to prevent legislation that can be odious and that can be detrimental to people of a minority status. But these are critical times, He has promised mass deportation. That is something that he has said he would begin on day one. So we have to, in fact, look and see how he goes about doing that, what that will entail, how that will, in fact, whether that will protect the due process of people or whether it will just be run roughshod over people's human rights. So there are a lot of stuff in terms of what appointments he makes to the Justice Department, to his cabinet, to the issue of climate change. There's a lot of things that are going to be rolling, and I guess we will have to be examining closely as we do an analysis of how effective he's going to be as the 47th President of the United States.
We also want to include in this conversation an analysis of Kamala Harris and her campaign. But before we get to that, Marlon Hill, how do you believe Donald Trump's leadership style and decision-making process will evolve in his second term?
That's a very interesting question, Richard B., a very big one, because you have to remember the office of the presidency and the executive role, it's a branch of our government, right? And then you have a person who has been the chosen elected leader to hold that office. So Prof is correct. What do you do with that power, right? And so this is a very important moment for the people, our friends who are listening to this program, to understand the role that we play in this democracy, right? Because we are the fourth branch, right? You got to monitor now, how does he use this power based on who we know who he is? And Prof is right. This is perilous times. How is he going to exert the use of that power now, holding presumptively the Senate and the House, and he has the Supreme Court? With power comes extraordinary responsibility. But that does not mean that these powers can't swing back again unchecked if the powers are used irresponsibly or even used vindictively in a way that to the detriment of the people, right? So this is something that we as individuals who are voters, hyphenated Americans, being a part of the process, this is not the time to disengage. This is probably a time to pay very close attention to whether or not our government is going to heed what we need and what needs to be done for our own security and our different needs. And we'll see where it goes from here.
Mm-hmm. But would you say that the systems are in place to manage and monitor that power and how it is used? Are you confident in the systems that are accessible to the American people? Marlon.
That was me?
Yes.
So I'm very confident in our systems. As a lawyer, I spent my days over the last 2 weeks being a poll watching attorney, ensuring that every voter had the right to vote irrespective of their partisan affiliation. So, for me personally, I have great belief in this experiment of this democracy. And you have to understand, people like us of Jamaican descent or people who are from minority communities, we are being swept into this experiment. And you have to understand that you are living life, starting a business, having a family, buying a home in the context of this experiment of this country and how it's demographically. So, when you move to the United States, you're not moving into the bubble of a Brooklyn or the bubble of a South Florida where I am. You're moving into the history of this entire United States that has a context, Richie, that you have to kind of understand how you fit into that. So this is why it's important for you to kind of remain engaged and get involved in a way where you can push the wheels of government that meets the needs of your families. And this is what it's all about.
All right. I'm going to get back, Professor, involved in the conversation. But Marlon, as an attorney at law, I just want to tarry with you a little bit longer and ask you for your views on the fact that the president-elect does have a conviction. And how will that impact his presidency? And do you see any problems in the offing?
I think the Supreme Court has given you some signals of that they want to give the office of the presidency loose guardrails, and that is very concerning to me. And this is why it's so important as to the type of person that holds the office of the presidency. If that person screws are loose in a way where they feel that they just can arbitrarily wield that power to their own benefit as to the benefit of the people, this is where the people of America will have to monitor that very closely, because we know who the person that has been selected through this process of democracy.
All right, Professor Wilson, looking back, do you believe that the 107 days, I believe, that Kamala was allowed to campaign, was it too short? And where do you think she, shall we say, came up short in terms of her campaign?
I think she ran an outstanding campaign. I think she showed and emphasized some important policy issues, such as the sandwich generation, how that generation.
Professor?
And
yes.
Bring in a certain amount of support to small businesses. Child care, which has become unaffordable in certain parts of the United States. So I think she ran a gallant campaign. But I also think that one of the issues with the Democratic Party is an inability to understand and to explain to white working class the damage that deindustrialization has done to the hollowed out counties and cities in the Midwest. Even though Biden won the 2020 election and has been trying to bring back manufacturing to the country in terms of 730,000 jobs, that the devastation that took place in the deindustrialization in terms of the reduction in the standard of living, people committing suicides, the impact that fentanyl has had on hard drugs. I don't think the Democratic Party understood the impact that the white working class and black workers and Latino workers suffered under that deindustrialization. And I think they were just poor in explaining what had happened, let's say from the 1890s coming right up to the present in terms of the impact on people's lives of that deindustrialization.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Prof.
Richie.
Yes, go ahead, Marlon.
Yeah, Richie, if I could just chime in on that, I think again, Prof is so on point this morning. I do think that for what she was able to accomplish within the time period of the last four months would be written about for generations. She didn't have the benefit of a primary. If we want to take a look back at it, you remember when President Barack Obama, when he ran, he had the benefit of over 2.5 years of a primary, a very spirited one to that fact, against Secretary Clinton at that time. So he had to build a connection in the heart of Iowa, in the hearts of Ohio, in the hearts of Florida, outside of these big cities, right? And I don't think she and the Democratic Party did, whether they didn't have enough time or they didn't put enough resources, like Prof said, in connecting with these folks that are in these working class neighborhoods. And at the end of the day, they voted for their securities and their insecurities at the same time. And when you look at the numbers on the margins, those are the margins that lost her that election in the blue wall, in the rural areas of Georgia, Wisconsin, and even the rural areas of New York and places like Florida as well.
Mm-hmm. Professor, she has not yet spoken. Kamala Harris has not yet spoken. But what would you expect her to say to the American people and also to those who supported her when she speaks, hopefully later on today?
Well, I would imagine she will be gracious in her acceptance speech in terms of congratulating Donald Trump in winning the presidency. That is what we expect in a democratic society. I don't think there's any question that there was a fair election, that there was no skullduggery, that we will not have any attempts to tie up things in the courts. I think it was an election that was well conducted, and in fact the returns were much quicker than we really expected. People were talking about that we would not have returns until later on in the week. And by late last night, we had a clear sense as to who was in fact going to be declared the 47th President of the United States of America.
Marlon, I know that you would have also supported Kamala based on a number of policies that she proposed to implement once she became president, if she did. But she will not be president. Donald Trump will, in fact, be president. Do you expect the Republicans to adapt or include any of the proposals that Kamala Harris's team would have put forward during their term?
I have zero expectation of that, Richie. What I'm more concerned about is whether or not how they're going to use power with regards to the needs and the security of the American people. For us, you have to remember the government is a fluid process. You still have persons that represent you in the halls of Congress, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. There's still a role for us to play on things that they're proposing and things that we agree with and things that we don't disagree with. You have midterm elections that are going to be coming up in 2026 because congressional representatives have to run every 2 years. So we'll be paying very close attention to the things that are proposed. You remember, we discussed this right here on this program. Congress does two things. They pass laws and they also pass a budget.
Yes.
If you agree with the laws and the budget that they're passing, then we can go from there. If you don't, then you have to step back up to the plate again. And we'll probably be speaking on this program again when the democratic cycles return.
Mm-hmm. I'm going well past time, but I want to get this one final question into Professor Wilson. There are some who believe that had the results gone a different way, that America could be on the brink of a civil war. Are those fears now allayed with this result?
Yeah, I don't think there was going to be a civil war if Harris had won. I think that the powers that be were really quite anticipating any possibility that could have occurred. There's no question that what occurred on January the 6th, 2021, a lot of those people who attempted a coup d'etat are now serving terms in prison. In fact, some of them might be exonerated by Trump, who has, in fact, promised that. But I don't think we're on the verge of any kind of civil war or any kind of serious unrest. I think, as Marlon has mentioned, in 2 years' time, we have another round for 435 people from the House of Representatives to be elected. How Trump functions during those 2 years. Politics in America has become very fluid. And if he cannot perform, if people are not satisfied with what he does with the power that he has now obtained, people will in fact move towards giving a majority back to the Democratic Party. And I think we have the fourth estate, we have civil society, and there's a lot that can really take place in a democratic society outside of the halls of government to ensure that government remains democratic and committed to the principles of democracy.
Gentlemen, you have both been of great help on this journey as we provided good, exciting coverage and views on this whole process in the United States of America. I want to thank you both once again, Attorney at Law Marlon Hill and retired Provost Professor of John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, Basil Wilson. Thank you both for your time and your thoughts, and I wish you both a wonderful day today. Thanks again.